What's going on, everyone? So in this video, we see that MPG wants Sony's handheld to compete with the Switch 2. It gets interesting. He thinks that it could do better than a Vita. Is that possible? Sony will probably be the only one, just because they're a hardware manufacturing company, that could be like some sub shadow of Nintendo success. They've tried it before, but what ended up happening? And let's be real here, right? Nintendo beat them. Sony has never beat Nintendo in the handheld market. They beat them every single time because they're way better developers and they have in-house. And they have that buying power that people love, evergreen, all that, right? Because they're that good. But it's not like Sony did a bad job when they made their handhelds. They just, as usual, light off a third party like Monster Hunter and stuff like that. They had some cool games, and some of their handhelds were actually good. I had them. You know, I mean, I even had the Vita, which was terribly disappointing. One thing I'll say before we get into this is that, um, yeah, they chased them out with the Vita and they exited out. Like, they could have kept going, but nobody saw anything. And it's like I would tell people before. The reason why is because they were never successful for leading that anyways. Nintendo was the only one that made it like that. If you remove them, handhelds is nothing. Nobody would look at it. They wouldn't take it serious. It's just them making it seem that way. So other people followed. It's the same thing with the Steam Deck, with the ROG Ally. Oh, they're all wannabe aspects of Nintendo. They want what they could have, but they can't do it. And they're not offering you a dedicated handheld world. And what I mean by that is that those games are only for that handheld device. That's how handhelds always worked, regardless of what you say about it now, but it will not sell because of that. Because the only people that made it like that is Nintendo, and they led the whole industry to be successful and get where we are. So this is something we have to understand since we're getting into the handheld. And I'm going to talk about that because I've been with them since 1993, and I understand. So I'm not saying MBG is going to be wrong about what he's going to say, but let's just clear some things up here. All right, let's get into it. Like, I'm subscribed. Here we go.
Sony is maybe they have the mindset that if they just give a decent marketing push
Yeah,
for a dedicated handheld device, not dedicated, a native handheld device, that, I mean, think about it. They could kind of lean into the marketing of our first dedicated handheld since the PlayStation Vita.
they will. But why? Because of the success of Switch. You see, Nintendo had to do it again. They consistently have shown the gaming industry that if I didn't do it, none of you would even be here. If either you can cope or you could say that's correct because it's true. This has nothing to do with liking them or not. It's just literally this is what's happening every single time. Why is it always that way? Right? Um, and because they said, no, you still can do it, but actually I want to do this type of device. Now here comes the imitators. Just saying, it happens every single time. And they're the ones that made it successful. So of course Sony's going to come in, but Sony could be the only one that could get a handheld to probably sell 20 million outside of Nintendo. Yeah, because they have that hardware base, they have the loyal base, and they just have it. You know what I mean? You guys know what I'm talking about. They're the ones that can do it.
I don't think that they could call it a true successor to the PlayStation Vita, but the spiritual successor to the PlayStation Vita. I think Sony could sell many more units of that than they did so like if the PlayStation Portal has a lifetime sales of, let's just say, 5 million units when it's all said and done. The PlayStation Portal $200 streaming only device accessory, if that sells 5 million units, lifetime, I think a proper $400 to $500 very capable, you know, native PlayStation handheld where most PS5 and almost all PS4 games could be playable on it. I think that thing would sell. I think it could go beyond 20 million.
Yeah, because just because of Sony, yeah. But like you said, it's not going to be dedicated. No, it's over. Nobody could play that game but Nintendo. See, it's the same thing again. You can't do an exclusive handheld world. Now more than ever, everybody's trying to go multi-platform. You see what I mean? Well, think about who controlled the handheld world for almost 30 damn years in a row with exclusives and the way they did it. They made it that way because I'm saying that was the game. And that's the game that people really want because that's what 90 something percent of that world that Nintendo made successful were. It was just there. You know what I mean? There comes all these other little, I just want to get 0.5% of that or 0.1%. Okay, go ahead. But you know what I mean? That's all that's going to happen. The handheld world is tougher than the console world. If you think it was competitive, try going in there. Nintendo has the whole damn thing, but they made it successful because of that. You see what I mean? So what I'm saying is that the only people that could probably get a chunk out of that uh, would be Sony. Everybody else, nobody's going to pay attention to them, and that's just the way that it is.
Truth be told, I do. I mean, if you think about it, the PlayStation Vita,
Yeah.
that was considered a failure, and that sold over like 30 million units. Um, and that
No. MBG, the Vita sold like 14 million, bro. Yeah, barely hit 14 million. Yeah, it was that bad. What I have to say is that Sony made a huge mistake by not putting a proper L2 and R2, and they had no first party. See what I mean? They were trying to rely off a bunch of old games and some stuff that was coming out, but there was no market for it like that. They made too many mistakes with the Vita. It had a potential though, but like I said, if you ain't bringing those type of games, I mean, it's not going to work. Nintendo basically just crushed them and they ran out, and now they're coming back because they made something else successful and they see some type of, I guess, additional aspect they can add in. But only because they made the world living like that. You see what I mean? If they're not there, then there's none of that. It doesn't exist. Just the truth, though.
was with Sony not doing anything for it. Like basically, Sony had a couple of launch exclusives. They stopped making exclusives for it, and then by that point, it's basically the position that PlayStation VR2 is in right now, where it's completely at the mercy of third-party devs making bespoke PS Vita versions. If Sony can come out with a handheld that's like, well, most PS4 games just automatically run on it, no problem. Most PS5 games can play on it or just need minimal work done by the devs, and some PS6 games might even be playable on it, or cross-gen PS6 games. I'm telling you, man, I think that has a real chance of not competing with the Switch, not doing anywhere near the Switch's numbers, but being able to actually make Sony a viable, like not a viable, but a relatively dominant force in the handheld space again. So if Nintendo is the number one with over 100 million, over 120 million, potentially over 140 million Switches or Switch 2 sold, I think Sony will be in a distant second place. It'll be very distant, but compared to everyone else and everything else, I think it could be considered very successful.
Yeah, he's right. Because Sony has proven that they were able to do that before. Everybody else tried. Sega tried. It doesn't work. You have to have that brand power. I'm telling you. But now more than ever, people are going to know, okay, this is for people who are only in the PlayStation ecosystem, but they have a living ecosystem where it's like, see, this is only right here on PlayStation. You can play this right here through this handheld, through connecting that. And that's the way that Sony's going to do it. You're going to have these timed exclusive aspects. And now it'll be there more than it did before because they have all those games there interconnected where the Vita wasn't connected like that. Sony can get that to work for them. Now, they're not going to try to obviously compete head to head with Nintendo. Everybody knows that's impossible. Now more than ever. Back then, you had your chance. You know what I mean? Now that's not going to happen. There's nothing you can do about that. It's kind of like a Japan situation where they have like 97%. Yeah, you can come in there and get your little chunk, Sony, that you have left because you've abandoned so much of it. It's like the handheld community saw that you abandoned them. Nintendo never abandoned. See, Nintendo don't abandon. That's one thing I love about them. Same thing with Japan. They never abandoned their own hometown. Sony leaves when they don't get their success. GameCube, Nintendo kept going. 64, they kept going. Wii U, they kept going. You see what I mean? They don't give up on their base. That's why people love them, and they keep going. And they don't cook out none of that. You know what I mean? And there's people in the game community that really like that. I understand. I'm not with them just because they keep their exclusives there. I'm with them because I love their developers. You know what I mean? And like I said, they don't sell out. They don't sell out to politicians. They don't do none of that crap. They don't over microtransaction you. There's a lot of things that I've said that I like about them where people will understand. They never abandoned an handheld community. They even combined both. So both of you come over here. You know what I mean? Sony's like, Yeah, yeah, they left out, you know what I mean? And there's people like, dude, what the hell, you know what I mean? So that is a community, and they look at that and they're like, yeah, no, no, they don't respect that. Just trust me, I know, because that's the only place where that's pretty much left in that sort of sense. Like I said, everywhere else is just supplementary devices that you can already do on other things that people choose as a primary function.
It's kind of like the Coca-Cola Pepsi thing. In this case, if Switch is in the handheld space, if Switch is considered the Coca-Cola, of gaming, I think Sony would be perfectly fine in that space being the Pepsi of gaming. Um, that's my thought process anyway.
Nothing wrong with
I
that.
don't think Sony would anticipate selling.
But there's people that do kind of want some sort of little war coming in where it appears like, because once again, you were used to that your whole life. I can let that stuff go, but I enjoy it. I do it for entertainment, but I don't take it to heart. To me, it's all cerebral, or you can be in the cerebellum cortex and all that if you want to stay down there in the lower mind too, depending on how you want to entertain. But yeah, I don't take any of this to heart, by the way. But you guys see my passion flare up, and I get fiery. But at the end of the day, things are good. Trust me. Ain't no hate over here.
20 million units. I think Sony is trying to be reasonable. That's my assumption. They would be reasonable with their handheld and probably accept
Hopefully,
that, we have a portable device that's sold 2.3 million. The Steam Deck, for as popular as it was, went on to sell 5 million.
or
Hey, if we can get 8 to 10 million, we're golden. I think that's Sony's mentality towards their upcoming dedicated handheld.
if they're gonna start the generation off with it though, MBG, they probably want at least 20 million. And this is not a video coming in here to attack him. No, this is just uh, me having to add in what I need to add in. I know he's not a guy that's been in the Nintendo world, so that's why I need to speak and put that knowledge. Or I will tag him too. But he says he wants to go in there, and my recommendation, MBG, you should. You have so many generations right there waiting for you, and there's no way that there couldn't be a single game you couldn't like if you got your hands on it and actually tried it. I would recommend that you do. I've been in all the worlds, bro, and I'm telling you that to me, there's no competition when it comes to first party. And there's some games that 100% that I know you would like. You just have to give them a try. Um, and like I said, I'm not the type of guy that comes to somebody over spewing negativity. I know you don't like it either. I'm the same way. I criticize Sony the way I criticize them because they deserved it. And I think if you care about something, you're going to speak up. That's the way that I see things, right? If a coach is watching his player, the team is doing bad, but the player's acting up, is he just going to sit there or is he going to get on his ass? Or he's going to be maybe a little bit aggressive? Could some coaches be more aggressive with more love and some, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, like sometimes when change is needed and balance is needed, then it may get a little bit rough, sometimes a little bit ugly. But that ugly and roughness is not bad because it's trying for better. It's the complacency that is the problem. Um, so that's my thing. I actually like MBG because he tells the truth and he's an honest person. Yeah, some people may think that he overrepresents Sony. Yeah, I mean that may be possible. Some people may think that I like Nintendo the most. Come ask me, you know what I mean? But you guys have seen my channel. You know what I'm about. I can't just do Nintendo only. No, my channel didn't even start off that way. I actually started off PlayStation because that was the games that were available that I was interested in the time. You see what I mean? I'm where the best games are at the time, and I told you what I like the most, but I'm not missing out on other experiences. And I will not tell somebody else to either because I have a problem with a company. I will tell them, you make your choice based off of how you feel or what you think you might want to try. And I would never tell somebody to not go try out the winning platform that won it all and never bent the knee. That makes no sense to me. If I get anything in life, tell me who's number one. Who would not want to check out number one? Does it make sense to me? That's where I feel like I was like, so you want me to just listen to you complain all day and I don't get the experience, but I can afford it and it's no problem? Hey, get the fuck away from me, man. Not talking to him, but I'm just saying people like that. So that's my thing. And as far as getting back to the handheld, yeah, I mean, once again, that's over with. But would you come in and get extra profit? Who wouldn't? Same thing with the ROG Ally, whatever profit you can get. Like I said, if you think it's gonna sell like millions or whatever, then no, man. If the ROG Ally got 5 million, that would be amazing. If it got 10, that would be insane. That's how tough that world is. Watch. Just remember what I said. Um, and as far as Sony, yeah, that they will be second place, and nobody's going to outsell them after that. You know what I mean? They're just trying to get behind Nintendo and get whatever money they can. It's extra money. See, in today's world, these businessmen guys, it's extra money no matter what, and that's the way we need to think about it.
But I could be wrong. Maybe they have a completely unrealistic expectation. Maybe, or not
No,
unrealistic, but bullish expectation. Or maybe Sony looks at this as like, we are going after Nintendo and we are going to sell 10 million units of this handheld in like, the first 4 months or something.
when you get slapped around so much and they made you exit out, I don't think you're coming back to experience that again. They just kind of want, like I said, their own profit.
Oh, you like that, Michael?
Hmm.
It changes colors, by the way. Yeah, I think Sony has a good chance with this handheld. I think they have a good chance. I think that the chance of this handheld establishing some kind of foothold where Sony can celebrate it and feel good about it and feel like it was a worthwhile product, I think that's there. I think that there is
Yeah,
absolutely at least millions of players, PlayStation players. There are millions of PlayStation players who I think are uh, craving, and that's a weird term to use, but frankly, with the way I see some PlayStation players act about the Vita, like craving a proper PlayStation handheld again. And I feel like,
but that's going to happen if you think about it in a way. They have that, they're doing this, they're making that successful. Why don't we have one? You know what I mean? It's like people will start to think of that. But if that company was never successful doing that, it never pops up in their head. You just got to know some of these people are infantiles. They think like children. And you have to understand that. Very few are grown up. And that's probably really hard for some people to really understand what that really means because light is photosynthesis and a lot of them don't grow up in that. Um, like I said before, Sony has people, just like you see these riots, even millions of people that literally want something like that. They have to have it. They better have their own handheld. And it has to be there has to be games there that no other community can touch, even if it is a lot of timed and stuff like that. They want it. Trust me. There's a demand for it, and they will buy it. Yes, just because that is still left over, and that community is there. Trust me, and they will buy it, and they will try to floss it in front of the Xbox community. They're going to make fun of that. They're going to say it's not a real console device. It's just, an optional device on PC. It doesn't have any exclusives. It's coming. Trust me. Watch. I'm calling it right now, and you guys know it. So that's going to be around the corner. Get ready for that and a lot of other stuff. So you'll be able to make stuff off of that.
like for a lot of those players, the PlayStation Portal was just a tease,
It
and
was a
the real
test.
thing's coming. I mean, look, I'll be honest. I would buy a PlayStation handheld just because to me that's exciting and like whoa. Um,
I understand.
yeah, I wasn't there for the Vita, and apparently I missed out. People love the Vita. It'll be cool to be here for this. I was there for the PlayStation Portable, so I do have that nostalgia. But I would definitely be excited for Sony to re-enter the handheld market in a meaningful way. And I think the only thing that would depress me about it, I think the only thing that would depress me about it is knowing that the only way the PlayStation 6 handheld can work correctly with my PS5 or my home PS6 console is digitally. You know what I mean? There's a digital footprint there where it's like, that's a whole nother question.
But that's the thing, MBG, digital stream cloud. They're pushing it. That's the future. They're going to consistently push that no matter what. Nintendo's the only one preserving that. That's why I say, bro, that stuff you're talking about, that's in the Nintendo world. Sony ain't gonna go do that because they're not making physical games. They're not making dedicated games to the handheld market. We say, here's the PlayStation Portable box art. Like, it's gone, bro. And they ain't going for that because barely anybody's going to support that. They know that PlayStation, they built into that to get 80-some% digital. If you want that, go get you a Switch 2, bro, because other than that, it's not happening, man. You ain't going to get it from no Steam Deck, none of that. All of them, they all been digital. Like I said, don't listen to hypocrites. Um, If you want to know, I'll tell you the truth, man. And yeah, of course, I came after you a couple times with some of that console war stuff. I ain't got no problem with you. Honestly, I like you more than I like a lot of other people. So yeah, let me know what y'all think about this. You know how I am. I just keep it real. I call it how I see it. Even though I know he likes Sony a lot, but I respect him as a man. And maybe some other people can understand that too if they get what I mean. Later, y'all. Peace out.